Welcome back to the channel that takes you deep inside the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Jack Hammer. Welcome. It is time to take a look at the 49ers Thursday practice update. As the title says, 49ers practice update, explosive performance, and Thursday report. So let's go ahead. Let's jump right into it. Before we get started, I wanted to shout out a few folks over in the comment section. We got our good pal, Luke Walsh, over in the house. He's a member of the Toolbox. Says, Lawrence Pillars, that like button. Hey, if you don't know who Lawrence Pillars is, that's one of the great 49ers that helped the team win the Super Bowl in 1981, I believe. I think he was also there in 1984. Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that second piece. But definitely good there. And then as far as getting the channel warmed up, I like this one from Luke also. Does a good job here. He says, Matt Barrows and Mayoko, they say there's no need to adjust your television. The 49ers ended practice 5 minutes later than scheduled. David Lombardi, yes, it was a good game, but it was the best bad game in 49ers history. Grant Cohn, yes, it was a great game, but it was the worst great game in 49ers history. So we're going to get this thing, and we also have some other ones as well. So let's get into it real quick. 49ers practice today. A couple of things changed up. One, Dre Greenlaw. Yesterday we reported on the show that Dre Greenlaw did not participate in practice. He was held out due to the groin injury. He was back on the practice field today. According to the 49ers listed Dre Greenlaw as a limited participant. So that's positive news. He's getting closer to playing. In terms of additions to that list, there was one name that was added to the list today. It was Samuel Womack, the cornerback. He did not participate in practice today. He was held out. So Dre Greenlaw back in a limited fashion. Samuel Womack, he's been dealing with a knee issue. He did not participate in practice today. Also on the 49ers injury list, listed as full practice participants. This is because these are players that were either injured in the past, still might be dealing with something a little bit, but they are full participants. George Kittle with a groin, Ray McLeod with the wrist. So they must still be having a little bit of issue, but they're able to manage their way through it and able to go. Trent Williams, he was back as a full participant today. He missed yesterday because he was resting. So in terms of the 49ers injury report, not too bad there. That's one of the things, right? Over the last couple of years, really going back to 2020 with the 49ers, man, just so many injuries in 2020, again in 2021, and last year too, a lot of injuries that this team had to deal with. They're coming out starting this year. They have not had very many injuries so far. Pretty healthy right now. Dre Greenlaw, like I said, returning back to practice today. But Samuel Womack did not participate in practice. He is dealing with a knee injury. Over on the Rams side, don't have their updated practice report yet as of this moment, but I can report that yesterday, Joseph Noteboom, he's listed as a tackle, but he's actually their starting right guard. He was limited in practice. He injured his ankle early against the Seahawks, but came back to play later on. So Joseph Noteboom was a limited participant yesterday. I would expect that he's going to play on Sunday. Also listed yesterday on the injury report, but he was a full participant in practice. Cornerback Akella Witherspoon dealing with a hip injury, the former 49ers cornerback who went from San Francisco to Pittsburgh and now is with the Rams, took a cheap shot on Sunday from one of the Seahawks receivers and is dealing with a little bit of a hip injury there. So that's the injury report as of today. Where we stand right now. Good thing, like I said, though, they are in a good spot in terms of their health. Wanted to shout a couple other folks that joined. We have Randall, another member of the Toolbox, says prediction, Viking win on the road tonight against the Sheagles. That'd be a big one for the 49ers, especially, right? If the Eagles can lose a game here early in the season, that you might, especially a home game, when you consider the NFC teams are only playing 8 home games this year. If you can if you can get an Eagles loss right here, that'd be a big one for the 49ers. A lot of players out, since we're talking about injuries, a lot of players out for the Eagles in particular in this game. Would tend to lean more towards the Vikings possibly being able to get this done. So we'll see how that plays out. Blind Tom, thank you so much for the nice comment. He says, hi, Jack, you are the best. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes. And Randall, the 49ers are pretty healthy. That's right. And that's a funny one because if you remember all the talk in the offseason about Brock Purdy not being healthy and why the 49ers should possibly just go ahead and let somebody else take over for the first few weeks to see what you got in them. That's a good one. Randall also says, Kirk Cousins says this is a Thursday night, not Monday night. I got this. So that's good. And then we've got Andrew H. says, Jack, you are wrong about the 49ers not covering on Sunday. This game is going to be ugly for Los Angeles. So, Andrew, I want to say thank you to start off with. Thank you very much for taking the time to read the article that I posted earlier today over at 49ers.pressdemocrat.com, in which I went through the entire NFL, gave my predictions for this week based on the spread. So it was based on the point spread. So, yes, Randall, unfortunately, I am predicting the 49ers not to cover. Is this true? It is true. 8.5 is a big number in the NFL. I could see myself being completely off on this one. I really could. So that's probably why I won't pick this in the pick'em contest that I'm doing on the side. But 7.5, Andrew says it's 7.5. Whatever the number is, if over a touchdown gets to be a little iffy, I got a little iffy when it comes to NFL games. Don't tend to like to pick those all that often. So that's why I would say, looking at this one, here's the thing. I can see this game being a blowout for the 49ers. I could also see this being a really close one. I don't think the 49ers will lose this game in any way. But at the same time, where I look at this game against the Rams as being something that kind of works against them a little bit, is that Matthew Stafford is a much better quarterback than Kenny Pickett. So I think he's going to hit some throws that Pickett had available to him last week that he missed. So that's partly there. I think they're going to be able to find a little bit more success on the offensive side of the ball through the air. I think the Rams will. The running game is pretty much non-existent. So if the 49ers can shut down the run on the way to the quarterback, I think that could cause some problems. And I understand why people, if you want to yell and scream and tell me that I'm completely full of beans on this, I would understand, because yes, I do think that Matthew Stafford's going to face more pressure than he faced last week. I think that's going to be an issue. Stafford's played this team in the past. He hasn't beat them in the regular season. His only win was, it was the biggest game that the two teams have played in the last 4 seasons, while the 49ers have been winning all the regular season games. You did see the Rams beat the 49ers in that NFC Championship game. And if you go back to that NFC Championship game, Matthew Stafford was banged around. There was a lot of pressure in that game, not quite as much as you'd seen in some other games. The Rams did a nice job in that game early on, using screens and things like that to really kind of slow this defensive line down. So we'll see how the game plan works. But if the 49ers don't get to Matthew Stafford in the same fashion with which they got to Kenny Pickett, or even if they do, I see Matthew Stafford as a quarterback who's going to be able to make some of those throws that Kenny Pickett didn't. So that's my concern when I go into this game. Like I said, I feel like the 49ers, if I was picking just, a straight up who's going to win the game, I would go with the 49ers. But with the points at 7.5 to 8.5, that's why I'm picking the Rams to cover, the 49ers to win in this one. That would be my selection at this point. But again, that's because I'm a little cautious when it comes to those kind of things, and that's a big spread for me. So that's the reason I went in that direction. VT 2022 says, even in that game, we got Stafford. Tart just dropped the ball. No, and you're right. You're right. That was a game in which, if you go back and you look at that game, there's a lot of things that could have changed. What I would, Stafford's going to give you an opportunity to pick him off. He's going to give you at least one, usually a few opportunities to pick him off. That's every game that we've watched the 49ers and the Rams play since 2021. That has been the case. So Stafford's going to put the ball in harm's way. It's a matter of if the 49ers can get it. On top of that, you said Tart dropped the ball. Yeah, absolutely. There's that part of it. The other part in that game is the reason it's even close is because Garoppolo misses throws, right? Jimmy Garoppolo misses wide open. George Kittle screaming down the middle of the field on a throw that should be an easy completion. And there's a couple of other misses throughout the game where he just doesn't let it go. So, again, if you disagree with me and you want to go 49ers plus the points and you feel comfortable with that, you're not going to get a big argument from me. I can understand that going in that direction. Scott Broyle says the fluke NFC Championship game beat up, wore down 49ers playing their 4th straight road game, and LA still needed their usual big assist, and the Tart drop to win by 3. Understood. I also think that the other part of that too is the quarterback not hitting throws that were open, not hitting George Kittle early. And I think that's where this team is different. now. There's so much talk about how Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo were the same. That was another one of those topics of the offseason, and it's just not true. There's a difference between these two guys. Brock Purdy much more mobile, much more willing to take the shots down the field. And sometimes, people get upset with me when I say shots down the field. I'm not even shots down the field. I'm saying throws over 10 yards. That's not necessarily an over, down the field throw, but it's easier to say down the field than say every time I want to bring it up, say, yeah, he's more likely to take throws into that 10 to 19 yard area or 20 plus area than Jimmy Garoppolo. It's easier just to say down the field. So I'm using 10 plus as that, so that you understand that as we move forward. But I agree, Scott, that there was, I don't know if it was, I wouldn't say it was a fluke. That game played out pretty much the way that I thought it would, with the exception of some of the mistakes by the 49ers. I thought it was going to be a close game. I thought the 49ers would pull it out. The biggest thing in that game was really the defensive tackle gains and the linebacker and the safety that they had signed just before the game. That was really did a good job in that run game, and they really helped shut that down. So I can understand if you want to say this is going to be a 31-17 game, like Larry Krueger said, or you want to say it's going to be 30 to 17, whatever. Again, not going to argue with you. I can easily see that coming, because this is a really good 49ers team, an extremely good 49ers team. People have been saying this all off season, so it's nothing new that I'm saying here. All off season, you had the national pundits talking about the 49ers as having one of the best rosters in the NFL. The only question was at the quarterback position, because, again, just like last year, because this time around they didn't know if Brock Purdy was going to be healthy. Well, guess what? Brock Purdy is healthy, and the 49ers are ready to go. So as far as the practice update, really quick, just to get back to that, in terms of today's practice, Dre Greenlaw returned. Remember, he missed yesterday's practice due to the groin injury. But he returned to practice today. He was in a limited fashion, but that's, there was lots of a good amount of him practicing on the field during the early portion that the media was able to watch. The one player who did not participate today, though, is cornerback Samuel Womack. Samuel Womack dealing with a knee injury, so he was out. In terms of the Rams, a couple of other things that I just want to hit on really quick that I haven't already. When you look at the at the Rams, I mentioned Joseph Noteboom was a limited participation in practice yesterday. Also, Kello Witherspoon, he was a full participant with a hip. Like I mentioned, also Noteboom injured his ankle against Seattle, didn't miss a snap. He will be starting at right guard, which means he's going to have his hands full with Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. Another thing to think about here is that the Rams placed their quarterback Stetson Bennett yesterday on the reserved non-football injury list. Head coach Sean McVay not getting into specifics as to what happened there, just stating that it was bigger than football. So we know that that's going on. Also remember, the Rams are without Cooper Kupp. The All-Pro had been dealing with a hamstring injury throughout the offseason. He suffered a setback at the end of August. He was placed on injury reserve last Saturday. But however, rookie Puka Nacua and third-year player Tutu Atwell, they come on. They made sure that the Rams didn't miss having Kupp. The duo each got 119 yards receiving, each of them with 119 yards. And then with that accuracy of Matthew Stafford, I think that's going to give the 49ers a stiff challenge there. Also, one other thing that was brought up I want to hit on is Jake Moody. We know the kicker last week was dealing with a quad injury that kind of slowed things down. That's why we didn't see him doing the kickoff in Pittsburgh, was because of that injury that he'd been dealing with. And Kyle Shanahan had said that they wanted to take that off of his plate. The 49ers do expect Jake Moody to be taking over those kickoff duties soon. Kyle Shanahan, though, as of yesterday, was non-committal as far as making that happen against the Rams. So just a couple of things there in terms of the injuries. No other updates at this time right now on the Los Angeles Rams. A couple of the things that I wanted to get into, if it's okay. And this is why it says, when you look at this update, it says 49ers practice update, explosive performance, and your Thursday report. So I just gave you the Thursday report in terms of practice. So let's take a look at this whole part about the explosive performance. And what the explosive performance is in regards to is the explosive performance of the 49ers offense against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me go ahead and let me see if I can get this on the screen for you. I want to pull this up so you can see the same chart that I'm seeing. Just give me a second. There you go. So this is the most explosive plays allowed during the 2023 season. So this is just last week. Obviously, we're 1 week in. So these are the plays that are allowed, right? Most explosive plays that are allowed. So when you look at this list, if you notice, the Pittsburgh Steelers gave up the third most explosive plays in the NFL last week, 12. So you take that, you flip that around. The 49ers offense had the third most explosive plays in the NFL last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had 8 passes of 15 plus yards. They had 4 runs of more than 10 yards. And, this just points back to the discussion that we've been seeing throughout this entire offseason in terms of the 49ers offense, in terms of the quarterback position, all those types of things. I want to also really quick, I can't pull this up for you, but this was the explosive numbers for the 49ers last season. So the San Francisco 49ers last year had the 5th most explosive plays total in the NFL on offense with 139. Of those 139 explosive plays, 89 of them came through the pass. And if you take the 49ers number of passing plays compared to a team like Kansas City, who had 124, Miami Dolphins, who had 118, if you take the 49ers 89 explosive passing plays, their percentage is favorable to some of those really high-powered offenses that throw the ball a lot more than the San Francisco 49ers. In fact, when you look at the numbers from last year, the 49ers had the 3rd most plays in the NFL overall that went for 20-plus yards. And I just think this is really interesting to take a look at. We've had so much discussion around Brock Purdy and his arm strength or lack thereof, getting the ball down the field, all these kind of things. Yet you look after week 1, and the San Francisco 49ers offense is still one of the most explosive offenses in the league. And it's been there, and it's going to be there week in and week out. Again, 8 throws of more than 15 yards. And then you have 4 run plays of at least 10. So really good numbers there. And you look through the list, there's only one team in the NFL that had more than 8 pass plays that went for more than 15 yards. That was the Miami Dolphins against the Chargers. So the Miami Dolphins at 17, that's more than twice the next best number in the NFL last week. You see the 49ers at 8. You see Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings, they were at 8 against Tampa Bay. You see the Rams matching the 49ers, the Rams with 8 explosive plays against the Seattle Seahawks. So those are good numbers, I think, for the 49ers. And I wanted to go through that and kind of just touch on that, because I think when you look at the 49ers overall, when you hear people talking about the 49ers, there's just been so much on the quarterback position about the lack of arm strength, the lack of the downfield throws, all these kind of things. And I think it's important to point this out. And there's just so many things that have been said in that direction that when you actually dig into the numbers and don't take everything at face value and actually take a look at the percentages instead of just the raw data, considering that the 49ers are usually one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL when it comes to attempts, when it comes to throwing. I think that really helps you to get a better understanding of what you're taking a look at and what you're watching. I have a tendency to be aggressive when it comes to these kind of things, and saying that if you understand what you're watching, you'd get it. And I do believe that. I do believe that there is a certain amount of not really getting what's happening in these situations. But again, the 49ers, one of the top explosive teams in the NFL last week. A pretty good performance there, and the other thing that's been talked about a little bit is the reaction to the 49ers victory in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I come on every Monday and we do the overreaction show. And I would say that I think, when it comes to the 49ers fans, 49ers pundits, people in the national media, I don't know if I've really seen much overreaction. I think that when you look at the 49ers as a whole, again, this is a team that is extremely good team. The offensive side of the ball, pretty much everybody came back with the exception of Mike McGlinchey, Daniel Brunskill. Brunskill wasn't even starting last year. He played a lot of snaps, but he wasn't a starter. The only starter they lost was Mike McGlinchey, who, according to a lot of people, wasn't good to begin with. So, okay, so you lost him, but otherwise you brought everybody back. Same thing on the defensive side, really. The only changes on the defensive side that were of any kind of major importance, I guess, would be in the nickel position where you lost Jimmy Ward, but Jimmy Ward wasn't even able to play last week for Houston. He's dealt with injuries throughout his career. That's why he lost his job last year, and why he ended up having to play in the nickel was because of injuries. So I think when you look at the 49ers and you look at this roster, it's hard to point to a weakness, and I think this is a team that has everything that it needs. The right tackle spot, I understand the concerns. I understand the questions. When you take a look at Colton McKivitz in particular, with the 5 pressures that he allowed on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I can understand that. Those questions have always been there, have been there all offseason anyway. So, and I understand those. I don't think that they're totally out of, off the mark. I do understand it. I think at the same time, I think it's important to take a look at the 49ers and understand how good they've been when they've had a weak point in their offense. Remember, this is a team in San Francisco, an organization under Kyle Shanahan, that went to an NFC Championship game in 2021. We talked about that game, the game against the Rams. In 2021, they go to the NFC Championship game with Tom Compton playing right tackle for them. So, all in all, make it, take it for what it's worth, in terms of that. But they were a solid team that year. And if you go back and you look at Tom Compton and his pass blocking numbers for that season back in 2021, Tom Compton, he allowed 27 pressures in 13 total games played. There was 27 pressures, 18 hurries. Of those 27 pressures, 18 were hurries, 3 were hits, 6 were sacks. So, he did a better job, at least overall throughout, than what we saw from Colton McKivitz in terms of protecting the quarterback McKivitz with 3 sacks allowed. But I think the thing, really when you look at it with the 49ers and with McKivitz, they were already up 20-0 before any of those hits occurred. The 49ers do need to worry about the amount of hits that they allow to Brock Purdy. They need to be smart about that. And I think we'll see Colton McKivitz improve as the season goes along. I think McKivitz is a guy who, he hadn't played right tackle before in the NFL. This was his first start at that position. Not only is it his first start, he's going up against TJ Watt. Not going to see a whole lot of those, but there's going to be some tough teams down in, Dallas keeps getting brought up. Dallas and Philly are 2 teams that get brought up a lot in this conversation because that's who likely the 49ers are going to play when it comes time to go to the Super Bowl. And again, the 49ers beat the Dallas Cowboys in 2021 on the road with Tom Compton at right tackle. They came back last year. They beat the Cowboys at home with Mike McGlinchey. And again, just if you go around and you listen to the discussion on Mike McGlinchey and the type of player that he was, the fact that the 49ers were able to find success with McGlinchey against the Cowboys in last season, that's a positive. The fact that they were able to find success in 2021 with Tom Compton, that's a positive. And I think that's going to be, it's the same kind of a situation here. In reality, McKivitz isn't even the biggest question. I think the biggest question long-term is going to be the right guard. I think Spencer Burford is the bigger question. Burford is a guy who, he rarely played every snap last year. Most of the time he was splitting reps with Daniel Brunskill. He'd start, but he wasn't playing the whole games. He wasn't playing all the snaps. There was a lot of rotation that was going on there. So I do think that when you look through this team, I would be a little bit more concerned about the play of Spencer Burford at this moment than I am with Colton McKivitz. I think he's going to be okay. I just, you look at the pass block numbers. These are the pass blocking grades. According to Pro Football Focus for the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday, they have Spencer Burford listed as an 11.4 when it comes to his pass block grade. Colton McKivitz, 40.6, Jake Brendel, 44.6, Aaron Banks, 49.8, Trent Williams at 72.8. Total pressures allowed, like we talked about, 5 total for McKivitz. That includes the 3 sacks, the hit and a hurry. Burford with 4. All 4 were hurries, no sacks on his end. All the sacks were due to McKivitz. And then Jake Brendel and McKivitz were the 2 that gave up hits on Brock Purdy. You look back at this game overall, he was hit 5 times, the 3 sacks and the 2 hits. The one sack though, he's running and gets tackled from behind. So that's not really a hit that worries you. You're more worried about the hit in the face in the second half where you had the hit and the fumble. That's a bigger deal. And even on that play, I think if you watch that one, Kyle Shanahan talked about it yesterday. That ball needs to come out sooner. He took a little bit too long to get turned to go to the next spot. So, but again, I just wanted to come on. I want to give you guys your Thursday practice update. The 49ers, Dre Greenlaw returning to the practice field in a limited fashion after missing practice on Wednesday with a groin injury. Samuel Womack was held out with a knee injury. So they're out. In terms of the 49ers, in terms of the Rams, we just got their practice update. No changes to their update in terms of Ahkello Witherspoon. He was a full participant yesterday. He's a full participant again today. Joseph Noteboom, who was a limited participant on Wednesday, he was a full participant today. Puka Nacua, the wide receiver out of BYU, the rookie that had 10 catches on 15 targets for the Rams, he did not practice today. He is dealing with an oblique injury. So we'll see how that plays out. That could also change. I know I put out my predictions, my picks for the week in terms of against the spread. If Puka Nacua can't go, that changes quite a bit. But Nacua dealing with an oblique, and you remember last year when it was Brock Purdy dealing with an oblique, it was actually a broken rib. So we don't know exactly how bad that injury is for Puka Nacua, but he missed practice today. The wide receiver of the Rams missing practice with an oblique injury. Also, another injury down for the Rams was safety Jason Taylor. He was a limited participant today due to a groin injury. So, again, Puka Nacua, that's the big one here. Not practicing today. That's the only player that's missed a practice so far this week for the Rams. Nacua with 10 catches, 119 yards against the Seattle Seahawks in the season opener. A big piece of what they do down there. Nacua, 119 yards, also Tutu Atwell, who's in his 3rd year. He had 119 as well. So there's your update in terms of the injuries. Again, let me just go through those. Dre Greenlaw returning to practice today for the 49ers. Also, you had cornerback Samuel Womack missing practice due to a knee injury. Womack is a backup, not a starter to begin with. Down for the Rams, you have Puka Nacua, the wide receiver, big game in week 1. He's the guy who took over for Cooper Kupp really in the slot. Puka Nacua dealing with an oblique injury, did not practice today. Limited in practice today, Jason Taylor. Joseph Noteboom, full participant after being limited yesterday, as was Ahkello Witherspoon dealing with a hip injury. He was limited. He was a full participant both days, but he's listed there because of the hip injury. So there you have it. There is your 49ers update. There is your Rams update. Again, when we talk about that explosive performance, the reason that's in the title, the 49ers coming up with the second most explosive plays in the NFL, tied with Cleveland actually for the second most explosive plays in the NFL during week 1. Let me go ahead and just pull that up for you guys really quick again to share that with you. And so when they're talking about explosive plays, as it says on the graph, it might be a little hard for you to see, but those are they're counting runs that are 10 plus and passes that are 15 plus. Arun's going to change this a little bit next week, he said, to make it 10 plus yards on the ground, 15 plus yards in the air. Either way, when you look at these numbers, the 49ers are right there. The Chargers giving up 17 explosive plays to the Miami Dolphins in week 1. The Dolphins far and away the most explosive passes. The 49ers, 8 explosive passes that they put up on the board. Fantastic showing for them. If you look at their explosive plays on defense as well, the 49ers had one of the bigger numbers, had the second biggest number in the league last week in terms of explosive plays offensively, and they're also near the bottom of the league in terms of explosive plays allowed. So solid performance. And again, I think it's just important to continue to talk about how explosive this offense can be, even though they have Brock Purdy and his limited arm running the show. There's so much more to playing quarterback than arm strength. People get so fixated on that. And if you go through and you watch the film of Brock Purdy, there's so many things that he's doing to move guys out of the way to create open holes and those types of things. So Andrew H., following up with what I said, he says Nakua did not practice today with the oblique. Absolutely. So thank you for doing that for me and shouting that out as well. I think I mentioned that, but again, real quick, last time, 49ers injury update from Thursday. Dre Greenlaw back at practice in a limited fashion. He was out on Wednesday with a groin injury. Samuel Womack, though, did not participate. He's dealing with a knee. Down for the Rams, Puka Nakua did not practice with an oblique, and Jason Taylor was limited in practice. Jason Taylor is a safety for the Rams. Joseph Noteboom, who was limited yesterday, was a full participant, as was Akilla Witherspoon. Noteboom in particular, that's going to be an interesting one against the 49ers because he's going to get matched up with Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead quite a bit. So there you have it. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Take it for what it's worth. Thank you all so much for taking the time to tune in. If you guys can do me a favor before you leave, please hit that like button. And also, if you're not already a subscriber to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And then once you do that, make sure you turn the notifications on because you're not going to want to miss any of the updates right here on Inside the Farmers with Jack Hammer. I will be on tomorrow with Larry Kruger, so we'll get that show for you. We'll break down and get ready for this game. I'll give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at 49ers Chargers. I will be also on live on Sunday from Los Angeles with a pregame show. I'll be on with a postgame show as well. And there'll be some other content as always on the channel. So make sure you've got it subscribed. Make sure you also have your notifications on so you don't miss any of the updates right here on Inside the Farmers with Jack Hammer. And I agree with Randall. I love my noodle arm quarterback because a noodle arm Purdy is averaging over 30 points per game. Hey, you got to have something to yell about though, Randall. You got it. You got to just complain. That's the way of the world. Nothing's perfect. Everything stinks. They're always going to find a way to lose, whatever. But hey, I thank everybody for tuning in. Like I always say, take it what it's worth for what it's worth. Like, subscribe, and also make sure you turn on your notifications. Thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We'll be talking to you soon. Take care.